Welcome to the Soundtrap Education Summit, a free online event dedicated to empowering and amplifying student voice with the theme, Their Voice, Their World. We're bringing you inspiring and practical messages from musicians, educators, podcasters, students, and more that can help you make change in your classroom right away. I'm Matt Miller, author of Ditch That Textbook and the moderator of the summit. Our sponsor and host of the summit is Soundtrap, a collaborative and creative audio editing platform. Soundtrap for Education empowers students and teachers to explore creative sound recording in all subjects, for all ages, and at all ability levels. And you can sign up for their free online course to learn how to bring music and podcasting to your classroom at academy.soundtrap.com. And in today's session, we're going to be super practical here. We're going to be talking all about student media creation. These are the kinds of things that students can create that they are proud of, that demonstrates what they know, that helps them to kind of like think through new things. And we're going to be kind of amazed at the kinds of things that students are going to be able to create. And I tell you what, the guests that we have on this show, these guys are going to bring it, because we've already been talking a little bit about what this is going to be all about. And I think you guys are going to absolutely love this. So in today's session, we've got Claudio Zavala Jr. and Jake Sandakly. So guys, thanks so much for joining us in this session. And let's do some quick introductions. Let's kick it over to Claudio real quick. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Claudio Zavala Jr. and I'm a digital designer in my district, so I'm actually leading the online learning piece, but I also do a lot of digital media consulting. I have a YouTube channel and post a lot to help others share their stories. That's like my passion, to help others share their stories. So give them tools, tips, and ways that they can do that. So really excited to be here today.
Yeah, awesome. We are too. And by the way, you are killing it with your background game, I have to say. That is pretty sweet. I need to get some tips after we're done here. So, all right, Jake, let's kick it to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yeah. So I am a music tech person generally. I just finished my master's degree from NYU studying technology for music education, where I was working with super high level, crazy coding things all the way down to working with students and helping them to create really fascinating, cool media projects. I also am a teaching artist for a couple of schools in New York City, where I'm based. And when COVID hit, we were about to present our 4th and 5th grade musical, and we transitioned that entirely into a digital performance. And since then, I have been helping other educators, other organizations kind of convert their worlds of on like live theater into virtual products in a bunch of different formats. So I've been very involved with educators around. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's unbelievable. We're definitely coming back to that, by the way. I want to hear all about the digital musical and all of this virtual stuff that you've been doing. This is fantastic. So, but I thought that it would be a good place for us to start to kind of touch on this, that, you know, if you think about traditional education, we've been an awful lot focused on, you know, go through the textbook, march chapter by chapter through it. Let's do some worksheets. Let's maybe have some discussion in class and let's move on. And like, you know, in some of the core subject areas, even in the arts, like, you know, there's still some of that like academic book work type of stuff. And I don't know about you, but I feel like, I mean, I was joking about this in another session. I mean, I wrote a book called Ditch That Textbook. So like, you know, I kind of obviously feel this way, that I just feel like we can do better than marching chapter by chapter through a textbook. And one of the great ways that we can do that, I think, is to let kids create, you know, to show what they know, to show what they're able to do, and really as sort of a creative outlet. And so, Jake, I wanted to kind of kick it to you first and just have you respond to that. You know, do you agree that, you know, giving students the opportunity to create is a really great way to teach and learn in today's age?
Oh, absolutely. I think it gives so much ownership to students over what they're doing. I mean, it's so easy to, you know, play your scales, play your, you know, whatever we've been doing for years and years. But when you see the look on a student's face when they are fully owning what they're presenting to you, even if it's 3 notes, but they wrote those 3 notes down on the piece of paper before they are playing them. It's just an incredible experience just to connect with that student and ask them how that feels. And it changes the way they play their instrument or sing their song or, you know, present themselves, and it gives them a boost of confidence like you've never seen before. Actually, when I was last working on one of the summer programs that we were converting into a digital musical, some of the students, we let them take Soundtrap by the reins and kind of do whatever they wanted with it, do creative projects, and we gave them feedback on them. And some of them came up with this entire rap of their own that they made themselves. They made the entire beat themselves. And you should have seen the Zoom call where we presented it to all of the students, and the looks on everyone's faces, the looks on the kids who made its faces, the pride that they could feel. It's just incredible, and such an opportunity that we can take advantage of today.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Claudio, what do you think? Is this kind of the way to go?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's such a cool stuff that Jake, that your students were doing, and I totally agree. You know, that by giving the students the opportunity to take that ownership and let them share their learning in kind of the ways that they're comfortable doing, you know, whether it's, you know, like creating a musical rap song, a video, a podcast, some way for them to share their learning, you know, in the non-traditional sense, you know, instead of doing write a book report, do this, you know, doing the textbook stuff, but, you know, still doing, you know, what they need to share their learning, but in ways that, you know, that they are where they're at. You know, if they're on social media, if they're creating those little TikTok you know, videos of dancing, you know, maybe they'll do something like that, and, you know, talk about what they learned in history class, and just so many ways that, you know, I think we need to take that opportunity to kind of open up that creative box, and not be scared to try things, and, you know, take the risk, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you tried, and it's like, well, okay, maybe that student is not they're not the singer student, you know, but maybe they can really put out a mean score, mean musical, to kind of have a background of another kid who maybe is doing a video, and it's like, you know, I created that piece. That's like my contribution to that project. So definitely take that give the students the ownership, the opportunity to create something that they normally wouldn't.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's fantastic. And that's one of the things that I think really impresses me about the both of you is that, you know, that's kind of your jam, is let's make something that's worth doing, you know? And one of the things that I've noticed that's a commonality between the both of you is that you're real big on pressing the record button. You know, whether it's in video or if it's an audio, if it's music, if it's spoken voice, you know, with the editing that comes afterwards and the planning that goes before it. And so, you know, I want to jump into some of the practical ways that we can use that record button within the classroom. But I just wanted to give you one more opportunity real quick, since we framed it in those words. You know, whenever you just hit record, what does that do, you know, in the classroom or outside of the classroom, with students, with adults, with whatever? It's like there's this freedom, this liberation that kind of comes with that. I wondered if you guys might try to kind of put your finger on that a little bit. Jake, do you want to take that first?
Sure. I think hitting record nowadays comes with a certain amount of like anxiety or pressure of like, this is the recording that I want to put out to the world. But we can also record a million times over, which, you know, we see people doing now, especially with, as Claudio was mentioning, TikTok. You know, people are recording and recording over and over and over again. You know, you take that selfie a million times. And once you start to do that over and over, especially with certain skills that you're developing, you know, like even just public speaking, sort of, you can develop those skills, and eventually, you don't need to record as many times. You get that take quicker because you're learning, you're practicing those more innate skills of self-confidence, and just when I hit the record button, I'm gonna nail it within the first few times, and I can do that. There's also a lot of power to editing afterwards, and nonlinear editing systems like, you know, any GarageBand style stuff, those are not going anywhere. Whether you're, talking about video in the future, whether you're talking about audio, they're here to stay, very likely. So learning those basic skills of trimming audio, getting like the space bar hit at the end of the recording out just to, clean that up. Little things will take recording skills to the next level and just build confidence in the final product the more times you do it.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree. Claudio, as far as hitting record?
Definitely, I would agree that there's a little bit of that anxiety, for sure. If this is your first time, your first go at it, there'll be that little bit of anxiety. But I think as Jake was mentioning, over time, you'll get better, you'll get more practice to it. Also, the idea of preparing even for pressing that record button. You can there's a lot of preparation that goes behind pressing that record button. I'll just, like, when I record my videos, there's scripting that I'll do, or I'll take some notes. I'll write down the bullet points of what I want to share, and to press recording, what happens? I press record. I have an audio recorder that I press, and I let that thing just go record. Sometimes I have really quick recordings, and it's like a 15-minute boom, I got it. The other day I did one. It took me an hour. I haven't had one like that in a long time, but I just let it go. And like Jake said, there's that power in editing afterwards where you can, like, okay, trim here, cut that out. I like this take better. I don't like this take, and matching it with video, obviously. And but there's just so much power in that, pressing that button, the speaking in it, recording it, and you can do so many things with vlogging and podcasting, and like we're doing right here, and hopefully we don't have to have any edits on this one.
Right, exactly. We're gonna wait and see about that. Yeah, if you're watching this at home, by the way, you will never see the edits because they will be done long before you get here. But yeah, that's kind of what we're hoping for. So so I want to dig into some of the ways that we can do this, because there are lots of ways. Actually, before I do that real quick, I wanted to add one more quick thing onto this whole idea of pressing record and the anxiety. I'm so glad that this brought up, and this wasn't part of our plans, but it is definitely a part of this. And I've heard so many people in the creative world say that the best way to get better at your work, whatever kind of work it is, whatever kind of creative work it is to do more work. And so the more that you do it, the better that you get at it. And then that sort of lessens the anxiety. And in fact, I heard Ira Glass talking about this once. Ira Glass is the producer of This American Life. It's one of the most popular podcasts that's out there. And he was talking about how there's this gap whenever you start doing creative work between what your taste is, because you've got good taste, and your ability at the moment. And your ability at the moment just isn't quite there yet. And you see that gap and you feel it. And you know that what you're producing isn't quite as good as what you like, but you keep doing it. And then you watch other people who are up here and you sort of try to emulate them. And you take what you can use and you leave what you can't. And all of a sudden the gap starts to narrow. And the more that you look at those other people, and you start to borrow little things, you kind of feel like, oh man, all I'm doing is just copying this person or copying this person. But when you take little bits and pieces of all of them and you put them together, all of a sudden you become a unique, true version of yourself that didn't exist before. You look at all of the musicians that are out there and you say, who are your influences? And they've got a list. They can go down 10 different artists or bands or something that all impress them, and it turned them into who they are. And I think even for our students, especially for our students who might not have that creative outlet so often, I think it's important for them to realize that, that it's okay if you kind of copy and borrow from somebody else's style. It's okay if it doesn't look the way that you want it to right now. This is a journey. And if you commit yourself to the journey, you just continue getting better and better, right? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as that goes, let's start digging into some things that we can do. Because I know with the both of you, I've got some big things I want to ask you about. That digital musical is still looming very much in my head, but I want to get to that in just a little bit. I found that it's super empowering for us educators if we start with something small. One of those things that makes us go, you know what? I can do that. That's doable. That's something that we can do. And so when it comes to creating something in audio or video, something where we hit record or, any of that when it comes to media creation, although I kind of like coming back to that record button. I kind of feel like that encompasses all of it. What are some small things that teachers can do to help their students express their voice, express their creativity, show what they've learned. You know, what are some small tips and ideas that you've got for that? And let's kick that over to Claudio first. Claudio, what do you got for us?
Well, I think a couple, starting off small, obviously is taking those baby steps. You're saying, hey, we're all going to produce YouTube videos in the class, and then just like, students will be like, but I don't even know where to start. And so, instead of starting off with a YouTube or even a podcasting, like, because it's there's some heavy editing involved in there, but like building up to that point. So it can be as simple as, I'm maybe thinking older students, but you have a device like this right here in the palm of your hands, and basically a little recording studio, video and music station here. And maybe even start with just taking some video, just capturing using the built-in camera and record yourself. And it can maybe even be one of those where this is like my practice, my take, and then you get it perfected. Even with maybe using the audio recording tool in your phone, and just maybe capturing kind of like journaling at some point, and maybe at some point that may become your podcasting. Or this is going to make you crack up, but there's sometimes I have these tunes in my head, like songs, little rhythms and little melodies that, I'm being a drummer, I don't know how to play keys. I can press the keys on the piano and kind of get a little tune out, but sometimes there's a little melody in my head, and I'll just like, oh, that's a cool little melody. Let me just record da, 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 or whatever. And then I'll ask a friend who plays keys, hey, can you take this and kind of give me a little bit of, of a melody, because you know how to play. But just little things like that. Just take the device you have, something like that, and just start off simple, just a little video recording, a little audio recording, and then build it from there, then go to the next step from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I totally love that. Okay. There's a couple of quick, simple starts there. Jake, what do you got for us?
I think the simplest start is playing to your own strengths as a teacher and playing to the strengths of your students. And if you're in, a choir setting, say for instance, like my choir setting, it would be something as simple as giving them a karaoke track and saying, sing over this, or giving the options for multiple karaoke tracks and saying, just sing this song. Or you could also do a multi-track kind of thing where you invite everybody to the same project, do a little virtual ensemble work on the same song if all the students are enjoying that song. But I think if you're not in a music classroom, there's even more you can do, because then you have all these different kind of art forms to pull from. You have, people in your class who will be musicians, people in your class who will be visual artists, people who will be dancers or anything. So playing to those strengths and saying, please express yourself for the purposes of this class through that art form. For me growing up, it was video. I spent all my time at the community television station in my town, and we, playing around with these video cameras and fancy editing softwares, and really it's a beautiful thing. But now you don't have to go to the community television station to edit a video anymore. Maybe some aspiring video editor will, light up at the fact that they can throw 3 things into iMovie, throw a title on top, and voila. And maybe some people will shut down to that, but they would love dance or something like so they could make a TikTok and download it, or a Flipgrid, whatever is useful to use. But just the idea of multimodal education and saying, like, do your own kind of project. And again, this is maybe for older kids who are more self-sufficient in that, but saying do your own project and pick your format, but include this, and this content. It's super powerful just to engage students in their own, the places where they're building their own self-confidence the most.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And, I'll even contribute something to this as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to type it in, but my thought is I'm just going to put class podcast, so that I don't have to type while you guys are talking. But this is a simple one. I think this could be as easy as borrowing one of Claudio's ideas, which was the the audio recorder. Just just grab a little bit of audio, and what I mean by grab a little bit of audio is, let's say once a week, something like that once a week. Let's say it's on a Friday. If you're an elementary teacher, since we've been doing some stuff for the older ones, let's do something for the littles here. You're an elementary teacher and you go around with your cell phone in your hand, or you bring kids up to your device, your laptop or something, and you start that audio recording and you say, hey, tell me something you learned this week. And they just tell you what it is that they've learned, whether it's something they learned in your class or something that they learned in another class, or something that they learned in general. And then you pull all of those little audio clips together into one recording, and then you publish it out on Spotify. And now you have a class podcast. And if you think about it, after every single week, there's a new recording. And so you're like chronicling the things that students are learning inside and out of the class. And that could be something as simple as, just grab the audio right there and then just publish it on Spotify. And yeah, so as far as that goes, I think that's a pretty easy one that you can do with elementary. Jake, what are you thinking?
That sounds to me like almost like a time capsule in audio format, which is so beautiful, because then not only is that showing what you learn for parents and for, at the end of the year, you listen to all of it, but then, 10 years down the line, your students can go back and say, look, this is what I did in fourth grade. We learned about the water cycle, and this proves it, it's, pretty cool stuff. And I think for elementary schoolers, it's super powerful to have that kind of collaborative, teamwork thing. I think from working with elementary schoolers a little bit in audio realms, especially in Soundtrap, it is helpful, to obviously give them directions relatively consistently, make sure that they remember, because they need, you can't expect them to remember last week's directions this week sometimes, and so one of the tips that I used and found really effective was putting the instructions straight into Soundtrap or the audio editor you're using, and I actually had a couple of audio files that I would just drag in every time that we started a new project, and the students would, they would instruct the students to hit play at the beginning and listen to the instructions, follow them, and then during those instructions, they'd end up hitting record, and they're off to the races.
Yeah. I love that. That's cool.
That's awesome.
Very good. See, look at all of these simple starts that we've come up with already. There's already lots of stuff that we can go do. I want to give Claudio one more chance as we're wrapping these up real quick. Do you have anything else?
Well, talking about like the getting started and the initial thing. So, I always like think of it, scaffolding the skill, and how Jake said, where you're at. So thinking of, if you're doing a video project or something like that, and if it's simple as starting with like a Spark video type little level, and then adding some audio that's there, and then you're like, hey, I'm ready to move up to like a Premiere Rush type, and then the pro level, but then all at the same time you're taking your audio piece as well, as you're like, hey, I want to maybe do my own score or narrate over the piece that that I'm doing. Maybe it's like a documentary piece, and that your voice is being added over. But I like the idea of whole scaffolding the skill level depending on what kind of tool you have as well, and again, a lot of it can be done right from your phone.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Claudia, I've got to say that's one of the things that I've been impressed with most is, and I know in your body of work, you talk a lot about using that, that smartphone that's in a lot of kids' pockets, and, it's so powerful, and yeah, there's an awful lot that we can do with that. So yeah. Okay. So we've got some simple starts. And so let's say we're progressing little by little further and further and further. And so now let's go a little bit bigger. All right, Jake. It's time. So we've been thinking about it. I know, especially for the music educators that are watching this, they're like, I've got to hear about this. So go ahead and tell us the story. Tell us the story about the virtual musical and like how it created. And then of course, give us the details, the nuts and bolts on how you made it happen.
Sure. So, the students I was teaching, we were working with them through the whole year from October through March. And then the week that was supposed to be their performance was the week that school was canceled. So luckily we had the practice under our belt, and that allowed us to jump straight into recording. And for purposes of recording, it actually worked out relatively simply, where all we would need to do, our format generally was we produced a movie version of the musical, all recorded over Zoom, and music recorded over Soundtrap. And pretty much it was all virtual ensembles via Soundtrap, where we started with music, and then the students would record their scenes in Zoom. The director of the show, I was the music director, so I handle all the Soundtrap stuff, and the director would get all the students in a Zoom call and share a virtual background of whatever the drop behind was going to be, and then drag her students onto the screen, and then use actually a screen recorder to grab exactly what she was seeing. And then that allowed us, we were doing Aladdin actually, and it allowed us to, during like the flying carpet scene, she took her mouse and dragged the students around on this flying carpet. And it was just beautiful and really kind of a fascinating, cool new experience. And we ended up throwing everything into iMovie, one scene at a time, lining up audio tracks with any lip syncing video that was done. So the director would also share her audio of the sound that we recorded in Soundtrap. So we'd export that MP3, play it during the Zoom call, and everybody would lip sync. And it was a tiny bit out of sync, but it sounded in sync. And there's actually some psychological properties that like usually make that relatively okay. If the audio is aligned, that's what's important. And so we would then take that Zoom recorded video, the Soundtrap audio that was used, and throw them on top of each other, throw the scenes in the mix, and one scene at a time we would do in iMovie. And then at the very end, we got everything together and exported all these we took all the individual scene video files together and exported the final thing and uploaded it to YouTube for a YouTube premiere. That was it. We actually even had a stage manager who was in 5th grade edit the bows, and who was really fascinated with video editing. He was like, "Can I edit anything? Can I help?" And we were like, "Yeah, here you go." And it was just really cool to have student involvement with that too. And students who might be on tech crews, maybe they're video editors.
Yeah. Wow.
Very cool.
That is unbelievable. And so here's the follow-up question I have to ask you about all of that. After having got to the end of that, first of all, you have an impressive product. You have a product that kids can be proud of, that they can have people go watch. And then the thing I want to know is, why was this worth it? I know there's probably lots of reasons why it was worth it, but you look at the time and the effort that goes into that. You've got this one video afterwards, but I'm guessing that the benefits that came out of this are more than just the one video that you produced. There's got to be way more than that, right?
Well, so absolutely. And the way we presented this was we actually asked people to have multiple devices or be running a Zoom call during the YouTube premiere so we could see everybody's faces during the show and responses. And just that alone, just like these kids being proud, sitting with their parents, watching this film that they were acting in. It's like a carpet debut in their living rooms. And it just like the pride on their faces. One of our students actually, who was a lead, had some special education stuff going on. And the idea that she came out and was a powerhouse through this musical, and watching the tears in her parents' eyes, it just made it all so worth it. And it didn't even have to be live at all. It was all recorded, and it still ended up being pretty hard work for these students to come in and record. Let's record all of your scenes in a row out of order. It's very different in form factor for the students, but it kind of shifted everybody's perspective a little bit and made it feel a little bit more focused and concentrated for those hard work times. And then you see the entire product come together and realize what a team effort really been. You see that after the fact. Whereas, maybe in live theater, you don't see that as much because you're backstage huffing and puffing between scenes, but in this, you're really watching yourself and everybody else. And as long as students are not too self-critical and just reminding, I think one of the important things with that is reminding students to, don't be hard on yourself if you see anything weird, but just look at the entirety of what we've created. And really, I think that has been, making sure that students are aware of that. It's had a lot of success, and everybody really
Nice.
loves the product, I think.
Yeah. Oh man, that's unbelievable. That's so cool. And see, I think the thing that I love about that is that, you know, at the beginning of this, there had to have been some doubt and some questions of like, is this even possible? Like, is this going to work? Do people do this? Can people do this? And you all just kind of, you know, brainstormed through it, probably did a lot of troubleshooting through it, and just, you know, continued to iterate. It's like, you know, there's that old saying about how, you know, if you're trying to, you know, create a business or something, they joke that they're building the airplane as they're falling, you know, like they jump and then they're building the airplane as they're falling. I bet there's probably a little bit to that, right, Jake, in that project you guys did?
Absolutely. And it's, you know, experimenting with, you know, my tech background definitely helped a lot, but even then, like seeing what worked with the students, it was definitely an iterative process. And since then, I've done it a few more times with different age groups, and you know, it's really fascinating to see what works and what just totally doesn't, and how much you can get kids before they get a little overwhelmed, and how much, you know, or how much in there like, oh, this is a breeze. It sometimes it catches me off guard still, like, you know, students just taking full charge of what they're doing and knocking things out of the park. So
Very cool.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Totally love that. I know that there are some people watching this whose brains are just like spinning with, you know, ideas and ways that this could work. So that is so cool.
Love it.
All right. So Claudio, I want to kick it over to you. We're talking about going from the simple starts up to the big, the whole what is possible, what can we accomplish type of stuff. And so where's your mind on all of this?
Well, one of the big things that I'm a proponent of when I share anywhere in social media or in school and just in any time I'm in interaction with educators or creators or anyone is I'm all about, you know, the person who can tell the story the best is you. You know, as the teacher, as an educator, who can better tell the story than the teacher? A student, who can better tell the story than the student themselves? So it to me, it's like thinking of ways that you can do that. So you know, thinking of a video project that you may be working on, or even creating some short little snippet stories, like they can be like TikTok, but like in something like a Spark Post video where you have a video and an audio piece to it, is keeping it short, but like building your identity, who you are, and again, you're the best one to tell it. You know, you add a little logo of yourself or something you create, and tell these little short stories about who you are, and it can be as simple as that. These little short stories, you know, the students that are older that may be on social media, that's the place where you can definitely share who you are, and more about, you know, of there's a lot of stuff that's being posted on social media, and it's one of those things where like instead of just adding to the noise that's there, you know, you can tell it as a story. You can tell it as, you know, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. And maybe it can be like a day in the life of me, you know, how and about me, you know, the younger grades, you know, I remember when I taught elementary, we did those, you know, about me papers, but it's maybe like as simple as an about me video. And again, throwing it up on a Spark little video, and here's who I am. There's a picture and a little music background to it. But and some of the bigger projects that it can be like a documentary on me. And it's like, again, who can better tell it than me? And you can do your own narrations, or, you know, this is where I live, this is my house, and this is who I am. And if I'm an athlete, you know, get some shots of you playing the sport, and you can narrate what's happening. And that's like one of the big pieces, and one of the things that I enjoy sharing with people is like, you know, the storytelling piece, and the best person is you, and no one else can tell like you can, and no one can tell you, no, you're telling the story wrong. It's like, hey, this is my story, and I'm going to tell it. And you can have some pieces of like narration on it, and music that you can put together if you're using something like Soundtrap, or wherever you have a little narration, and you do a little editing and a little bit of soundtrack behind it, spice it up a little bit with stuff like that. As some of the older grades that can probably do a little bit of kind of some of those little projects like that, definitely is a way to go, is the storytelling piece. And there can be, you can do it in so many things, and you can make it as, it can be as big and as complicated or simple as just like, I'm gonna do a little 15-second little clip, and that's how I'm gonna share my story in 15-second increments, or I'm gonna do a whole little 5-minute short documentary, and but there's just the spectrum of what you can do. It's just depending, like Jake said earlier, your strengths, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna do this because this is what I can do. I'm gonna do this because I can do this piece.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love how you said it can be anything from just something teeny tiny, like a little 15-second clip, all the way up to something much bigger. And yeah, that's fantastic. And I know Claudio, you brought up this idea of storytelling, which I think is so, so important. And it's powerful. Like if we want people to, if we've got a good story of ourselves, or if we have something important to say, that's really what this whole summit is about. It's about their voice, their world. If we want to communicate our voice and we want people to hear it, and if we want something to change as a result of it, then storytelling is really one of the best ways to get that done, right? It's like, that's the way to capture people's minds. That's the way that we've been passing history and ideas down for centuries, is through using storytelling techniques. And so I was hoping maybe, we could all sort of riff on that for just a second about the power of that storytelling and maybe how it fits in the class. Like if we've got any tips or ideas or anything for teachers when it comes to that. And so, yeah, Claudio, you were just talking about that a little bit. I want to kick it to Jake for a second. Then I'm going to come right back to you. Okay. Jake, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I think that's such a beautiful thing to include in your classroom. Storytelling is, I mean, like Claudio was saying, is one of the most powerful forms of communication. And like Matt was saying, like for generations and generations, that's how we've passed down information historically. And it's so empowering to, either display a story and be a part of a story. Like, from my theater background, of course, kicking in is, telling some story that is really engaging for people right now, or telling a story that hasn't been heard yet, that maybe is your own. And that's so incredibly powerful because you can expose issues that are so personal to you. And right now that can bring just, I don't know, personal touches to how the world affects you, and how the world is working really for you as an individual. It's so important to see right now, because in a world where we have sometimes a lack of communication between people, standing their ground pretty firmly, a personal touch and storytelling and something to invoke empathy is probably one of the most powerful things we can do right now. And students' voices are really the most important. They're the next generation. Teaching them to use their voices and shout it loud across the waves of the internet is probably one of the best things we can do for preparing our next generation for the world that they're entering into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm with you on that, that if there is a time, and I know there have been lots of times like this in history, but if there is a time where we need people to communicate solid ideas and base them on empathy, I think we're sitting right in the middle of it. So, Claudio, how about you? And I know you were just talking about storytelling earlier, but now a little more explicitly towards like the power of it. And then, I also want us to be thinking about, be thinking about like tips and ideas for teachers on ways that they might use it. So what do you think?
Definitely. And I was going to say, equipping the students to be able to share that story, and giving them the tools to be able to do that. I was taught how to do a paragraph and write a sentence and short stories and things like that. So as a teacher, as an educator, you want to use the tools that are available for a student to be able to share the story. So if it's as simple as hey, we'll share a story through a vlogging format, so, and again, we'll pull the device, you can use the camera that's built in. You can use tools like Flipgrid out there. You can spark video, and there's a plethora of video tools you can use out there to go and vlog, and as simple as doing something like that in the classroom capturing audio. I know a while back, I had a good friend that was doing something at high school where they were bringing in students during like a lunch or an off period, and they were kind of doing they set up this podcast for the campus, and like, that'd be really cool to do at other campuses where it's like a student hour or something like that, and a time for students to share and talk about the things that are impacting them, and then be able to get that out into the world for others to hear. And I think that's the giving students the opportunities to, I think that's probably one of the big pieces that as an educator is like giving the students the opportunity to do that, is to share their voice, and whether it's with the audio tool or a video tool, but it's giving them the opportunity to share that. I think for many years it was like, as a teacher, you're up front and it was like, hey, I'm going to talk, you do what I say. But it's more like, again, you're facilitating, and it's like guiding them. Okay, here's some tools I'm showing you, and now uh, go off and practice this to do it, and I'll just kind of be here as a guide and checking what you're doing. And there's always challenges with stuff that you have to get done in a class, but you can definitely take those things that you have to do, and it's like, hey, I'm going to do a little twist on that. It's a history lesson, but let's just kind of do a little twist on that. Like, what if I had been living during that time? Maybe if I'd been living during the Declaration of Independence when it was being written, and I'm going to write it from the perspective of a student at that time, but create it like an Instagram story at that time, like a little vlog, a little newscast, but taking a little twist on things like that would hopefully get students excited to do the work.
Yeah. I think you just brought up a really important point, a really important way that we can incorporate some of those storytelling concepts. Like if you're a teacher watching this and you're racking your brain on how this fits, I think Claudio used a very important word that can help us focus that, and that word is perspective. Because you see, we can see things in history, we can see all sorts of things from different perspectives. You look at literature, you look at current events, you look at history. Of course, all of that stuff is sort of humanities based. I've always thought too that, even in some of the science and math type of areas, you could even look at it like, balancing equations as an idea about balance. And I still believe there's sort of a story there. It's kind of poetic trying to get everything in balance. It's like, kind of something that we're all trying to do with our lives. And sometimes whenever you connect that very, personal human side into something as exacting as science and math, sometimes it puts a different twist on it, and it captures it in the brain a little bit differently. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm so glad that we talked about story there. Now, if students are going to be doing media creation, which is kind of the heart of our conversation here today, whether it's the little small starts that we did, or whether it's some of the bigger ideas or some of the storytelling ideas that we've talked about, there's an important thing to talk about once they're finished. And it's actually about once they're finished, but it's also something they think about at the beginning too. And that's audience. Like, who are we making this for? Because it can be kind of demotivating, I think, if we do all of this work and the only person that sees it is our teacher. Even if we like our teacher, if we just do it for one person and that's it, and we work so hard on it, making sure that students have an audience to create for, I think, can be super important. And then also designing whatever it is that we're doing with that audience in mind. And so, Jake, maybe I can kick this one to you first, as far as audience, and with your music background, feel free to take that spin on it. How does the audience for the things that students create, how does that play into it, and what should we do for our audience?
I mean, one of the first obvious audience for any student work is going to be families. And that's every time. Families and family support through education is one of the biggest elements. And a lot of times you see that at, dance recitals, music performances.
Mm-hmm.
The parents show up and they're there to support. And having that integrated into other parts of education is very valuable, and into those parts of education still through this virtual kind of climate that we're going through. So there's the other side of it, which is social media potentially, which is definitely super powerful too. Having some kind of product to create that a student can be proud enough to post that on their social media and say, this is what I did, and get recognition from their friends, from their extended family, from people that they've interacted with here and there. I mean, social media is a whole big conversation as for students, but the power to be able to post that is really a cool thing, I think. So having that digital piece of art or music or whatever it might be representing their education, that can inspire pride in education, because if you get those likes on that video, then that shows it was worth it. Sometimes in this world, like, that's a weird thing to say, but sometimes that's the case. The most powerful things for me sometimes are tutorial videos, actually teaching others, having students teach others how to do something, and that way they can always look back and teach themselves again.
And Jake, I'm so glad you brought that up, because with social media, we do have the opportunity to get things out to people and to do it en masse and everything. And I'm glad that you put your finger on the point that, yeah, there is the likes and there is that metric, but I also have found too that if students are able to share something and other people end up watching it, and even if they come up to them just face to face and say, hey, I saw that video that you all posted on the class Facebook page, that was amazing. And then all of a sudden they've got that personal connection and they go, oh my goodness, somebody actually looks at that stuff. They actually see it, it kind of changes things, doesn't it? So,
yeah.
Claudio, what do you think about audience?
Well, definitely, like Jake said, you got your school, your families there, your peers, you're creating, the content, and if you're sharing a story, but if you're starting to create content where you're helping people better themselves with their story or ways that they can create something, it definitely, that's your first audience. And eventually, like, I'll just speak from experience as posting something like on YouTube, and social media, and building up your subscribers and things like that. But ultimately, it's like, one of the things that I definitely try to convey to educators and anyone else, jumping into when you're creating content and sharing stories, is, definitely the ultimate thing is, it's about the story. Whether you get 100 likes, 100 subscribers, or none, is to feel proud of that story. Ultimately, it's like, I you know I like the story. It's me. And then is when you share it, and if others enjoy it, they may not like, you may not get the thumbs up, you may not get those numbers, those subscribers, but it doesn't mean that there's less value on the story. But ultimately, I think that's like one of the things as educators, like, to help students realize that, don't worry if you get the whole class liking the story or not, but it's like, you want to make sure you're proud of that story, you worked hard on it. And over time, then it's like, oh, people start, like Jake was saying, people start saying, oh, I saw that story, I saw you did that, that's pretty neat, can you help me, I'd like to know what you did. And then little by little, and eventually, like, it's just a side effect of you sharing your story. And it's like, oh wow, all I did was want to share a story. And now I've got a ton of people asking me, how can I share my story?
Right, absolutely. Oh my goodness, I feel like I could just talk to you guys about this all day long. This is fantastic, and it still even feels like we're just sort of scratching the surface. But we're going to start to bring this to a close a little bit. And at the end here, I wanted to see, I know that there are lots of different directions that someone watching this can go if they want more, if they loved this conversation and they want more. So I know one thing that you can look at is, if you're watching this during the summit and you're on the speaker page, we have these takeaways that are that our guests are sharing with everyone. And so you've got that. And I know, lots of people in the summit have created content that you can go check out. Some of them have products that you can go check out and everything. So I just wanted to kind of kick it to both Claudio and Jake. Like, if people want more, do you have a place where they can find you on social media? Do you have like resources out there? Any of that stuff? Is there anything that you've got related to that? Let me kick it over to Claudio first for that one.
Sure. Well, You can definitely look me up on social media at Claudio Zavala Jr. That's pretty much Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and um, my YouTube channels where I share a lot of content. And again, my passion is helping others share their stories and giving them tools and tips on how to do that. So you can check out my YouTube channel. You can find me there. You should be able to look me up as Claudio Zavala Jr., but it's youtube.com/I am Claudius, which also happens to be my website, iamclaudius.com. So you can find me there, and I have a ton of stuff that I share out, and all free. Go learn as much as you want, and or start off little and then expand.
Yeah. And then we've also got another link that I wanted to mention real quick, Claudio. You've got a place where people can go to be able to find gear, right? Like if they're wanting to kind of level up their their audio or video creation game, right?
Yeah, kit.co/I am Claudius. Yeah, everything from like little vlogging kits to starter vlogging kits to like full on YouTube setup and mobile setups and stuff like that. Definitely go check them out there, and from whatever you need, you should be able to find stuff there. If not, you can reach out to me. I'll help you out.
There you go. Oh man, and we've got Christmas gift ideas too. Man, I hope people are watching this from me. I'm totally all about this as well. So, all right, that's cool. Very good. So, Jake, how about you? If people want more, what can you give them for that?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm on social media at Jake Sandakly, pretty much is most of my accounts. And you can also check out my website, jakesandakly.com. I'm just getting started, but if you want to join me on the journey of as I start to post more and more, the one thing you will find on there definitely is my virtual ensemble toolkit for whatever online DAW you're using. Soundtrap is the one that I go with. And you can find the audio files that I actually used to help my elementary schoolers record in Soundtrap all in the same project. You can find those files there, as well as a guide guiding you through how to set up a virtual ensemble audio only. And then I'll be adding resources there as well for video creation over various platforms. And yeah, if you want to reach out at all, I'm also doing consulting right now for educators like you, probably sitting there scratching your head saying, how am I going to do this? So I'm working a lot with educators probably just like you, and happy to shoot me a message through my website or through social media, and we can consult.
Yes. Excellent. Very good. Well, this has been so good. We've gotten so many practical ideas. There's been a ton of inspiration here. I just so appreciate the both of you. Thank you both so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah. And thank you so much for watching this video in the Soundtrap Education Summit. And we will see you on the next video. Take care.